Hi, my name is Derek Espejo. I am the manager for Scottish Stained Glass. Dalle de Verre glass is a 1-inch thick chunk of glass. It's totally different from the typical 1/8 inch to 3/16 inch stained glass that you would typically find in most stained glass windows. So it was really popularized in the 1930s, and it's just evolved to using different materials and methods. And here's an example. So here's a chunk of Dalle de Verre glass. This is called a glass dalle. Comes in these 8-inch by 12-inch hunks of glass, and you chip away and cut at it and make these nice little facets to get beautiful windows. Dalle de Verre is completely different from traditional stained glass. So traditional stained glass is made up of, well, I'll show you. It's about 1/8 inch glass. Got some pieces in my drawer here. So this is your typical, this is from an old restoration project that we're matching glass for. But this is your typical 1/8 inch stained glass, right? And this is what you would use in leaded stained glass. And this is what you'd use, which is typically about 1 inch thick in Dalle de Verre. So totally different. And the material that makes up stained glass, right, that actually holds the glass together, it's actually lead, right? Majority of the material that's used is something that's called lead cane. And with Dalle de Verre glass, instead, it's actually the material that holds it all together is going to either be an epoxy coated with an aggregate, that's what's most commonly used today, or it's also going to be made with concrete. So this is lead cane, essentially, right? Or I'll use this as a better example. And you would slot in your stained glass right here. That would slot right into there. And then you would put another piece of stained glass on the top. And then you would just join, this entire matrix of lead cane, and then you'd solder the joints. That is traditional stained glass. Dalle de Verre glass, you basically have chunk 1 inch thick cement wall. You pour it all in one shot, and you let it cure, and that's Dalle de Verre glass. Dalle de Verre is typically installed in a lot of churches, right? It is it's super popular, really common throughout the South. There's tons of Dalle de Verre in Texas. You can see it scattered throughout the United States since it's a newer medium of glass. Typically, you won't see Dalle de Verre glass in older architecture, right? So buildings that are, pre-1930s and 1940s, you'd be really hard pressed to find Dalle de Verre. You likely won't. It would probably be a retrofit after the fact. Buildings that were, maybe 1950s beyond are when you really start to see a lot of Dalle de Verre. The biggest benefit to Dalle de Verre glass over traditional stained glass is going to be its strength against storms and impacts, as well as it's got a much higher insulative property than your traditional 1/8 inch stained glass. So you've actually been able to get the Dalle de Verre glass approved under Miami-Dade code standards against hurricanes. And that's because, again, it's 1 inch thick, super strong stuff. And with the epoxy, the wind load that it can endure, as well as impacts, is really quite substantial. So this glass tends to be extremely tough, extremely durable, and you get greater energy efficiency because you're dealing with material that's 1 inch thick. The insulative properties way more than your traditional leaded stained glass. Dalle de Verre is still used in modern design today. I've done a few consultations recently for new builds in designs. We're actually repurposing one. There's one that we're installing in about a month in Kansas, where we're actually going to be mounting this into a granite slab in a mausoleum, right? It's in the shape of a cross. And so it's used in all kinds of different applications, from new construction to apparently tombstones. You can really use it in a lot of different ways. There's another one where we're using it to surround a baptistry, and it's going to be backlit, and it's going to have it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So it's still very prominent. Scottish stained glass can repair and restore Dalle de Verre glass. All the value that you get in your Dalle de Verre glass windows is in the glass itself. This stuff is really, really hard to come by. It's very difficult to come by, and it's extremely expensive. Typically, when Dalle de Verre glass windows begin to fail, or they're damaged by a storm or vandalism or something like that, we have the ability to take those windows apart, re-pour them, reuse all the original glass, and it still ends up becoming, it's significantly less expensive than making new Dalle de Verre glass windows. Plus, a lot of that old glass, right, that you've got in your windows, once it's gone forever. A lot of that stuff you just can't find anymore today, especially the different reds. Very, very hard to come by. They're not really making it anymore.